It's Avengers Endgame today. It's Avengers Endgame today. It's Avengers Endgame today. Avengers Endgame today. Avengers Endgame today. Avengers Endgame today. Avengers Endgame tonight. Avengers Endgame tonight. Avengers Endgame today.
Shut up!
Avengers Endgame today. Avengers Endgame today. Avengers Endgame today. Avengers Endgame today. Avengers Endgame. 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 Avengers Endgame.
Hello everyone, Justin here. I saw this film the Wednesday of the week it came out. The official release date was, the 26th on Friday, but I actually saw it that Wednesday. I was able to get myself and a friend some tickets to a Wednesday screening. However, when I saw it, I really felt like I needed to see it a second time. The film was so radically different than what I expected it to be that I wasn't able to fully take it in, and I really felt like I needed to see it a second time. And so I was like, oh, okay, there's this usual group of friends that I have at school that, they usually like to see new movies, but they usually like to wait a few days until after it comes out so that the hype dies down and the crowd dies down, and that's when they go. So I figured, okay, I'll go and see it that second time with them. Well, then we postponed it, and then we postponed it again. And it kept getting postponed to the point where, I first saw it on April 24th, and it's now May 18th recording this, and we finally saw it again that second time on the 16th. So, 2 days ago. So, yeah, it took forever for me to see it this second time, which is why this review of the film is coming out so late. But I swear, I saw it the week it came out. I saw it the Wednesday it came out, Wednesday the 24th. I swear. But I really felt like I needed to see it again, and that's why it took so long. That being said, this review will have spoilers. This will be a spoiler-filled review, and the reason for that is just simply this is not a film you can talk about without spoiling. It's not. The marketing was so incredibly secretive. I mean, the trailers gave away nothing. We all walked into this film not having any real solid idea of what it was going to be about. All we knew is that it picked up where Infinity War left off, half the universe is dead, and there we go. You just can't talk about this film without spoiling it, because when the marketing gives away nothing, when there's nothing that they seem to want you to know going in, then really everything's a spoiler. So, spoiler warning, I'm just going to say that the film has been out for about 2 weeks now, so hopefully you've had the opportunity to see it. So, this is my review of Avengers Endgame. This film is a satisfying finale to the MCU so far. It is not the most amazing, incredible finale they could have possibly done, but it is satisfying. It does kind of leave you in a place where you're like, okay, I'm okay with how that went. First of all, it was like I said earlier, it was a very, very different movie than I expected. It's much more lighthearted. I was going in not expecting nearly as lighthearted of a movie as it was. There's a lot of humor, there's a lot of jokes, which, of course people are like, well, it's a Marvel movie, of course there's gonna be humor, but I don't know, I guess I expected a much more somber and serious film because of the really dark place that Infinity War left on and the really dark place that this film left on. But then again, there is that time jump at the beginning. And people have had 5 years to kind of come to grips with what happened. So, and the film wouldn't have felt like Marvel if they were just moping around for 3 hours crying and being depressed. So, I guess it makes sense that the film wasn't as somber as I expected. I was still really surprised by the amount of humor. The first third of this movie is almost perfect. When they said, Kevin Feige apparently said at one point that the advertising and the trailers was only taken from the first 20 to 30 minutes of the film, they weren't kidding. Almost all of the stuff in the trailers is from the first 15 minutes of the film. It's honestly incredible. And the first third of this film is almost perfect. It's perfectly paced. It hits all the right beats it needs to. It's just as you really get this sense of just how horrified everyone is about what happened and how guilty they all feel that they tried to stop it but they couldn't. You really feel what you're supposed to. Could it have been done a little bit better? Could it have been just a little bit more effective? Yes. I feel like people, but I at the same time I get it. I mean, they're in business mode. Like, the film starts like that, and they're already in business mode. Okay, how can we undo this? They're already immediately coming up with plans. Okay, we can do this, we can do that. If we go there and we get the stones, we can do this. I get that they're in business mode. They're very military minded, especially Captain America and Black Widow. They're very military minded. You know, they don't have the time. They've spent their entire lifetime, being trained to, when something happens, you don't, freak out. You just deal with it and do something about it. So I get that, but it still feels kind of weird that you don't really see them taking this in. Of course, there was that end credits scene in Captain Marvel, which I did see. That was a terrible movie. Like, right at the beginning of the movie, they just say, okay, we figured out where Thanos is. Let's go to the planet where he is. Let's go steal the stones, snap our fingers, and bring everyone back. And they're like, just like that? Yeah, just like that. And then boom, Avengers Endgame, the title. And I'm just like, wow, this is starting really, really fast. They get there, and they find out that you see Thanos, and he's all like scarred, and his like half of his body is burnt and everything, and you're like, oh geez, what happened to you? You weren't like this at the end of Infinity War, what happened? They get there, they arrive, and they discover that the reason why he's all damaged and everything is because he used the stones one last time to destroy them. The Infinity Stones no longer exist. He felt like he had a responsibility to destroy them. Now that everything he set out to do was done, he had these stones. They basically made him a god with complete power over the universe and everything. He felt like no one person should have that power, should have that ability. And so he, rather than spend the rest of his life trying to resist the temptation, he just destroyed him and got rid of it. And honestly, if I was Thanos, I would do that too. I would probably destroy the stones too, just to get rid of that temptation. But it really is this, like, holy crap. And it's almost like a little prologue, almost like a little short film at the end, at the beginning, I'm sorry. It's almost like a little short film at the beginning of them just trying to get the stones and them discovering that they do not exist anymore. He has destroyed them. And then immediately Thor just kills him. Thor just kills Thanos in like the first 10 minutes of this film, and I'm like, well, that was a short 3 hours. And Thanos is dead. And I'm like, okay, where do we go from here? And then cut to black 5 years later, and I'm like, oh, they're doing this. I mean, there was some suspicion that there would be a time jump. But really the next like 20 to 30 minutes of the film, you get a little bit of an idea of how the world has reacted, what are the current state of things 5 years after this happened. And you get a little bit of an idea. Like, Captain America's doing that therapy session thing. There's all these like memorials in public parks, the vanished, and then it lists all the names. And while that stuff is powerful, and I do like that stuff, I wish we would have just gotten a little bit more of an idea of how the world reacted to this. And I mean, I guess if they had, like, it would have, I guess it's the whole Jaws effect thing, what you don't see is more powerful, but I still feel like we could have gotten just a better idea of how the world has reacted to this. Because, like, imagine if you, in your life, just sitting here watching this video, and then all of a sudden, whoever's next to you just vanishes, turns to dust, and then you find out, like, half of all people in the world this happened to. Like, how would the world change? How would the world react to this? The Christians would probably think it's the rapture. The governments would probably panic and scramble to do something. I really want to see how the world would react to this. And we don't see enough of that. Maybe we'll get more of an idea in Far From Home, because Far From Home does take place post-snap, but I don't know. Either way, it is still effective. You do still see, and the most important thing is the characters, and you definitely do see how the characters are reacting to this. I mean, Natasha Romanoff, this big, strong badass, she, even 5 years later, she's still breaking down and crying, and it's executed in a way where you feel it. So, and you do feel the beats that you're supposed to. You do feel those emotions that you're supposed to in that first third of the film. I did feel like it was a little convenient that Ant-Man gets fled out of the quantum realm just by a rat climbing on the control panel. I really want to know who found that car and moved it into storage. It's like, oh, what's this big time machine looking thing? Nah, I'll just put it in storage. Like, did they explain that in the film? I don't know. But yeah, a rat climbs on the control panel in the storage on like the quantum tunnel thing, and Ant-Man gets let out. And Ant-Man's like, whoa, what's going on here? It turns out that even though 5 years have passed, he was only in the quantum realm for a few hours. And they realize that they can use this to basically time travel. So he goes to, the Avengers, he goes to them and says, hey, we can do this, we can undo this. And they realize, okay, we can go back through time, we can steal all the Infinity Stones from history, we can bring them back to the present, snap our fingers, bring everyone back, and then just go and return the stones at a point in time right after we took them, so that no alternate realities get created, and then boom, we did it, we're done. And I would be lying if I didn't say that I was disappointed that they decided to go the time travel route, because that seems like the obvious thing to do. And Marvel has proven themselves to be so creative throughout the MCU so far that I really wanted them to find a more creative way of undoing the snap than time travel. And time travel is just one of the most overdone tropes in film. Throughout science fiction, throughout fantasy, even Harry Potter did time travel. Like, everything has done time travel. Every major franchise has done time travel at some point. It's very overdone, and I was really hoping that they would find some other way of undoing the snap. That being said, it is a very unique way of doing time travel. Like, we've seen a million times before, if you go back in time and change something in the past, it alters the present and creates an alternate reality. We've seen that so many times, but this film offers the incredible simple solution of, well, what if we just, we go back, we change the thing in the past, we get it in the present, and then once we're done in the present, we just go back to the moment right after we changed it, change it back, nothing changes. And I'm like, that's incredibly simple but brilliant. And yeah, because it doesn't create a new timeline, because in the real timeline, they are going to go back and it's a very unique way. I really wish they wouldn't have made all the pop culture references though. Like, Rhodey's like, Back to the Future, Star Trek, Hot Tub Time Machine. Like, I really wish they wouldn't have done that. Like, we don't need all these pop culture references, especially when they create problems with the universe. Like, Hot Tub Time Machine has Sebastian Stan in it. Star Trek has Benedict Cumberbatch in it. Like, we really don't need all these pop culture references, especially when they create problems in the universe. But they do have a very unique way of depicting time travel, to the point where even though I am disappointed that they didn't find a more creative way of undoing the snap, and time travel is so overdone, they still found a unique way of doing it. They still brought that Marvel creativity to it. And yeah, basically they decide, okay, we're gonna travel through time, we're gonna steal the Infinity Stones, bring them to the present, snap our fingers, bring everyone back, and then just return the stones the moment after we took them. Nothing changes, no alternate realities, we're done. And they go to Tony Stark about this, and Tony Stark in the past 5 years has finally settled down with Pepper Potts. He's had a kid. He's in a really nice place. Of course, he feels the incredible guilt and shame over the snap, just as everyone else does. But he's in a nice place. He finally has that peaceful life with a family that he's always wanted. And they go to him and they say, we have this time travel idea. can you help us? And he basically says no. Not only is he afraid to mess with time travel, but also, like I said, he's finally settled down. He's finally got the peaceful life he wanted, and he doesn't want to risk time travel getting rid of his kid. He doesn't want to risk undoing the birth of his child. And so he just says no. And this is a really nice idea. The problem is that in like the very next scene, he suddenly figures out time travel. Just in the very next scene, he's like running a simulation on his fancy projector thing, and it's a simulation successful. I just did it! And then he goes to Pepper Potts, I figured out time travel. And I'm like, how the hell do you figure out time travel that quickly? Like, you didn't even know the quantum realm existed until they brought it up to you earlier that day or the day before or however much time has passed. You didn't even know the quantum realm existed at that point, and you just suddenly figured out time travel. Like, I get Tony Stark's supposed to be a genius, but I don't think Einstein would have been able to figure out time travel that quickly. I mean, it's... How... It gets to the point where, yeah, we get he's smart, but it can get to the point where he's too smart. Either way, it was for pacing purposes. I mean, this film's already 3 hours long, and if they had added more stuff, it would have been even longer. So pacing purposes, I get it. And yeah, the middle third of this film is them going back in time, stealing all the Infinity Stones, and they go to the Battle of New York, which is something everyone expected if they did go the time travel route. That leads to some fun insights into alternate viewpoints of the Battle of New York. For example, like in the first Avengers movie, when Loki's like, I'll take that drink now, and they're all just posing for the camera, and like Hawkeye's got his bow and arrow and everything. I've always wondered what happened after that. Did they just finish posing and they were like, all right, let's arrest him? Like, I've always wondered what happened after that. And in this movie, you actually do get to see it. You actually do get to see like they continue posing and they're like, and then Stark's like, okay, let's just not you're standing up posing up a storm. Let's go arrest this guy. So that was funny. And they also go to Thor: The Dark World, like Asgard during the time of Thor: The Dark World, so they can get the Ether Stone from there. And then they go to where Quill found the Power Stone in the first Guardians of the Galaxy. And then they go to the planet where the Soul Stone is, and they go to all these places in the past to steal these stones. There is one potential thing that doesn't make sense in all of this, and that is the Ancient One is there in New York during the Battle of New York, and it actually shows her like fighting and defending the Sanctum during the Battle of New York. And that does potentially create a problem because she was in like China or Tibet or wherever they were at the beginning of Doctor Strange, at the beginning of the Doctor Strange movie. And I guess I would have assumed at that point that she would have always been there. But then again, that Sanctum in New York has always been there. So maybe she went to New York specifically. Maybe she was always in New York, but she went to China or Tibet or whatever it was because she knew Doctor Strange was going to come. Obviously, she can see the future because she says, to Hulk, Professor Hulk, you're 5 years too early. Doctor Strange is performing surgery 5 blocks down or whatever. And I don't know, it's just, part of me feels like she shouldn't be in New York at that time. Either way, my biggest issue with this movie as a whole is that chunk of the movie where they're doing all the time traveling. Because honestly, at that point, the stakes plummet. Because of the way they've structured this time travel, if they fail, they can always try again. And, that happens when they're in the Battle of New York. Loki ends up escaping and stealing the Tesseract, and they're like, oh crap, what do we do now? Wait, we can go to an earlier time before that happened, and then they go back further in time to the 70s, and they steal the stone from there. It's like they're in this position where if they fail, they can always try again at a different point in time. And there's a potentially infinite amount of points in time because the Infinity Stones have been around since the beginning of the universe. no matter how many times they fail, they can always try again, and the stakes of the movie just plummet. And as a result, both times I saw this film, the film just suddenly stops being all that interesting, like right when the time travel starts. And that should be the most interesting part of the movie. That should be the part of the movie that gets you the most, that gets you right the most in it. That should be like that is the meat of the movie, is that time traveling. And the movie just stops being as interesting as it was for the first third right there, because the stakes just plummet. Not only that, but there are a lot of things in this time travel section that I really wish were handled differently. For example, Black Widow's death. Black Widow ends up dying, to get the Soul Stone and giving her life for the Soul Stone. And I really like how she and Barton are like fighting over who gets to die. That's a really interesting concept, and I like how it was presented. But once Black Widow finally succeeds in offing herself so that Barton gets the Soul Stone, it's just done so quickly. It's almost like her character is thrown away. Like, Black Widow has always been one of my favorite characters in the MCU. Like, there's such a great mystery to her. She's this big, tough badass, and yet she's also kind of a sweet mother character to everyone. Like, she's such an interesting character. And her death is over like that. And not only that, but it's shot, edited, and scored almost the exact same way as Gamora's death scene in Infinity War, to the point where not only is a major character dying in a very throwaway scene, but it's something we've seen before, because it's shot, edited, and scored exactly like Gamora's death scene in Infinity War. One of my favorite characters in the film one of my favorite characters in the whole MCU was just killed off, and it was done so quickly, shot, edited, and scored the exact same way another character's death was done, in the exact same place. So that right there was one of the biggest mistakes of the entire film, if not the biggest mistake of the entire film, was just how Black Widow's death was handled. Maybe the upcoming Black Widow movie isn't a prequel, and maybe she gets brought back somehow, but they claim in the movie she can't get brought back. Like, it's never outright said, but it's very heavily implied in these movies that you cannot be brought back at all if you died to get the Soul Stone. And with Gamora, they found a way around that. But so I don't know. I really don't like how Black Widow's death was handled. And all throughout all of this, Thor is fat. And I think fat Thor was very mishandled as well. Because I get the idea. The idea is that he's incredibly ashamed and incredibly guilty of how, if he had just aimed for the head, the snap wouldn't have happened. If he had just aimed a little bit higher, if he had just made a slight different change to what he did, none of this would have happened. He feels incredible shame, he feels incredible guilt, and he's now, wallowing in self-pity, drinking and getting fat. Like, I get what they were going for, but the problem is that it's played for laughs. If you're gonna go that route, what you should be thinking the first time you see him is, oh, dude, what happened to you? Oh, crap. Like, that's what you'd be thinking. But instead, the movie does it like, look how tee-hee-ha, look how fat Thor is. And it's like, it's played for laughs when it should be played for shock. Like, what has this guy done to himself? Like, how much has this shame and this guilt affected him? Like, holy crap. But no, it's played for laughs, and it's played as a joke the entire film. And I don't like that. I don't like how it just tries to make this huge joke out of something that should be a really big aspect of his character in this film. So, yeah, I would say the two biggest mistakes of the entire film are Black Widow's death and Fat Thor. Like, neither of them work, in my opinion. And the fact that both of them are such great characters. But, that being said, the film does get really good again and does really pick up again once they successfully pull off getting all the stones and they all come back to the present. While they were there, I really like how, past Gamora and present past Nebula and present Nebula, their minds like getting all synced up, and past Thanos seeing everything and like, I gotta go to the future now, and then past Thanos goes to the future. That's a really nice idea. They get all the stones, they come back to the present, they make like a makeshift Infinity Gauntlet with like Iron Man technology. Hulk says, he's gonna be the one to snap, which makes sense. I mean, he's almost indestructible, and the radiation's mostly gamma. That was written in there to make it work. Like, that's just plot convenience. But, it makes sense that Hulk is the one to snap. Hulk does. He snaps his fingers. All the birds start, tweeting outside, and then, Barton suddenly gets a phone call from his dead wife, and did it? Did we do it? Are we done? Is that it? And yeah, they just undid the snap, and I was like, okay, where is it gonna go? Something has to go wrong now, because there's no way undoing the snap was just that easy as just snapping. And yeah, past Thanos starts blowing up the Avengers base, and starts attacking everything, and he says, I'm gonna get the stones now, and obviously what I was setting out to do didn't work. Obviously, as long as there are people who remember what happened, they can never accept it, and so I'm just going to snap again, but this time I'm going to completely destroy the universe and create a new one that doesn't have the problems that set me out to do what I was going to do in the first place. And while that does kind of simplify his character a little too much, because he was such an interesting, complex character in Infinity War, and this basically turns him into, I'm the big baddie who's going to destroy the universe, it does make sense. Like, it does make sense. If I was Thanos and I said, okay, this thing I've dedicated my life to, I'm looking at the future, I did it, and it didn't work, try something else. It makes sense. And there's this really, great fight scene. There's this really great moment where like the Avengers are now fighting Thanos to try and stop him from taking the stones again. And I mean, of course, I giggled like a fanboy when he gets Thor's hammer, and when Captain America gets Thor's hammer, and he starts kicking ass with that. That was fun, of course. And I love Thor. He's just like, I knew it. You were worthy. I knew it. That was fun too. But eventually they get to that point where, it's the third act, they're all beaten down, Thanos looks like he's just about to win. Thanos all of a sudden gets his armies in, so now there's just this massive army, this massive fleet of ships, and there's only like 5 Avengers left. You hear Sam Wilson on the earpiece, and all these portals open up. Doctor Strange just starts transporting everyone there, everyone who's died, everyone who's still alive, everyone. Black Panther, Spider-Man, the Guardians, everybody just starts showing up. Not only that, but all the Asgard armies, all the Sorcerer armies, everyone just shows up. Even Howard the Duck's in there. There's this one shot where you can briefly see Howard the Duck. It's great. And like almost pretty much every major person in the MCU, except Vision and Black Widow, because they're both dead for good, is there in this battle. And I know it's just fan service. Like, I know in my brain it's just fan service. But at the same time, I'm a fan, and I do love me some fan service. And oh my goodness, when all those portals were opening and literally everyone shows up and the music is blaring, it was honestly quite possibly some of the most intense chills I have ever gotten watching a movie. Like, it was absolutely, like, the chills were so strong I felt like my heart was about to stop. I was just so many effing chills when everyone showed up. Then the music starts building up. The music just starts getting more and more intense. Captain America yells, "Avengers assemble." That was the moment where I almost died. I mean, I do not use this word lightly. I don't use this word very often at all because I don't like this word, but I have to use it because it just so perfectly describes what happened there. Nerdgasm. I nerdgasmed so hard when everyone showed up and Captain America yells, "Avengers assemble." I know in my brain it's just fan service. I know in my brain it's just fan service. It's just fan service in this big junk food movie franchise. But I nerdgasmed so hard. And sure enough, the battle ensues. They all start fighting. They're all trying to stop Thanos from, getting the gauntlet. They're all passing the gauntlet around to different people, passing the stones around to different people, just trying to keep them as far away from Thanos as possible, all while Ant-Man and the Wasp are, trying to get the time machine and the car back up and running. And this battle scene, while amazing, especially because every major player in the MCU that's still around is in it, even though this battle scene is amazing, it does feel kind of clunky. It does feel a little awkward, and it's not paced as well as it could. Like literally, like right as like we're really getting into the heat of the action, it just suddenly stops so Stark and Peter Parker can have this moment together. It's a really nice moment, but it just it doesn't feel like it just puts the whole action on hold. And there are so many moments throughout this entire battle scene that are like that. This battle scene is not paced as well as it could be. It feels very clunky. And at the same time, there are so many freaking characters in this scene. There's no way it would not feel awkward or clunky. There is no way it would not feel awkward or clunky because there's just so many freaking characters in this one scene. Some things are gonna go wrong. Like, editing wise and pacing wise, things are gonna go wrong. They're doing this, everyone's in this one scene, they're all fighting this massive battle with everyone, biggest nerdgasm ever, and eventually Thanos gets the gauntlet, he's about to snap, he realizes, wait a minute, where are all the stones? The stones aren't on the gauntlet. Turns around, Iron Man's got all the stones, Tony Stark's got all the stones, he says his famous I am Iron Man line, snaps his fingers, Thanos' army dusts away, and then Thanos dusts away. There, we're done. And finally, after 22 films, 22, I think that's correct. Finally, after 22 films in the MCU, the man who started it all dies. Tony Stark dies at the end of this film. And yeah, I felt what I was supposed to feel. It hit me like it was supposed to hit me. The emotional aspect of his death scene and the following funeral do work. It could have worked a little bit better. Like, I could have felt his death more. You're still feeling that this character that you've been attached to for so long, you're still feeling his loss. Like, it still works. It could have been more. It could have been a little bit more. The film ends with this nice little 15-minute sequence with his funeral, him leaving this last little video message to his kid, Captain America, when he goes back through time again to return all the stones, he doesn't come back. He goes back to Carter and, marries her, lives out the rest of his life with her, and then he's right over there all elderly and old, and he passes the shield down onto Sam Wilson. There was a part of me that felt like it should have been Bucky. Like, but honest, there was no way around it though, because character-wise, it should be Bucky. He's had the strongest bond with Bucky this whole time. He's literally been friends with Bucky since World War II. He's had the strongest bond with Bucky this whole time. Like, part of me really felt like it should have been Bucky that he made the new Captain America. But at the same time, Bucky is so messed up in his mind, and he's still, what Hydra did to him and everything, like, it still makes more logical sense that it would be Sam Wilson and not him. But it's still a really nice scene, and it's still a really nice conclusion to Captain America's story as well, to Steve Rogers' story. It's really, a lot of people predicted that he would, end up staying in the past and living out the rest of his life with Carter, but it still feels really nice. It's still, both Iron Man and Captain America's stories ended pretty nicely in this film. And that's honestly the best way to describe this entire film. The best way to describe this entire film, Avengers Endgame, is could have been more, but still satisfying. It's still nice. Is it the emotional roller coaster it should have been? No. It could have been more. It could have been the way the world reacts to the snap could have been more effective. Certain character choices could have been more effective. The way Stark dies could have been more effective. Black Widow's death could have been handled so much better. Thor could have been handled so much better. This film is not everything it could have been, but it's still satisfying. It's still a nice end to the story that the MCU has been telling for the past 12 years or so. These movies are not high art. These movies are not, masterpieces of human artistic expression. I mean, they're superhero movies. These movies are like your favorite guilty pleasure restaurant. They're not the best thing out there, but they're so consistently enjoyable that, with the exception of Captain Marvel, they're so consistently enjoyable that they're always something you can rely on. And as a last meal, this was a pretty nice last meal. And that's really all I can say about it. Thank you guys so much for watching this review. You can expect one more video from me before I leave Prague for good, which should be the Game of Thrones seasons 3 through 8 video. And I am, of course, still working on that final In Defensive episode. Not final In Defensive episode, why did I say that? I got finality on my brain because I've been talking about Endgame. But I'm still working on that In Defensive episode. You can expect that soon. In the meantime, thank you so much for watching. Bye-bye.